Good morning. Thank you for tuning in to Voice of Reason Boston. This morning we will be talking about the criminal justice system. This morning we have our special guest, Judge Frison, and she will be talking about her experience in the judicial system, where she's from, and just to learn more about the court in Boston and the kind of cases that she's taken. And as a community, what can we do to get educated on the process? If you've never been in court before, we'll be getting to know the process and what happens. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things this morning, and we want to welcome her for coming out, because we all know that it is difficult to get people to come and just talk about the criminal justice and the social issues, but it is very important for our community to be educated on it. Good morning, Judge Frison. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good, thank you.
Okay, and for all our listeners and our viewers who are listening and tuning in, can you just tell us a little bit of background, where you're from, and how did you get into the criminal justice field?
Sure. I'm from Chicago. I was born there and raised there. I went to grammar school and high school in Chicago. I also spent a lot of time in Mississippi, where most of my family is. I went to Harvard from high school there, so I came here to Massachusetts at that point, and became interested in the law while I was there.
Wow, that's excellent. How was it growing in Mississippi and Chicago? We know there's racial disparity everywhere, but in certain places, in certain states, it's more, how should I say, it's more prevalent and it's more in your face rather than hidden. In Boston, there is racial disparity, but it's not out there. It's hidden. How was it like for you growing up there?
Well, at the time in Chicago, I did grow up in a black community. I went to all black schools.
Okay.
I was aware of some racial disparities, but it really wasn't, I really didn't feel that it had affected me at that point.
Okay.
And it was quite a while, even with all the time that I spent in Mississippi. It was really not until high school that I really understood sort of the legacy of Mississippi and all that it is within the United States, and the symbolism of that state and some other states. I pretty much had gotten into high school before I even realized that.
Oh, wow. And how did your upbringing impacted you now, as far as, we grow up, and our families are a major support in our lives. Did your parents have any impact on the choices that you made growing up, in the direction that you wanted to take?
Well, absolutely. I think one's upbringing is really one of the determinative factors as to what you will do and how you do it, how you go about things in your life. My mother was a single parent.
Okay.
As I was growing up with my sister and I in the household with her, for the most part. And I did not know my father. And the work ethic that she had and the discipline that she instilled in us, so that even though we were in a single parent situation, she had to work, we had to go to school, we needed to take care of ourselves after school, and sort of be more responsible than you might be as an average child. And I think that affected me, and sort of what I decided to do, and I took that on as a good thing.
Yeah.
That I was more mature and made some decisions about what I want to do in the future from there.
And I think it's very important for people to know that even though you grow up in a single parent home, all is not gone. As long as your parent is working hard and providing skills for you to adapt in your community or how you're growing up. Most often, when adolescents or the youth or juveniles are impacted by crime, the first thing people tend to focus on is they don't have a father in their lives, or they're raised by their grandmother. And it's very important for people to know, even though you're growing up in a single parent home, you still have a life that you can prosper from. You still can succeed. Things may be a little bit difficult because it's only one person providing for you, but you still have the opportunity, like everyone else, to be successful, to be an impact and an asset to your community. And I think it's very important to know that, and for everyone who is listening to know that, because you're a judge. You know, you could have been impacted by many different things while your mother was raising you alone, but you chose a path that was right for you and that you wanted to pursue. And I think it's important for everyone to know that even though a child is being raised by a single parent home, they still have a life of prosperity.
I agree.
And also, tell us about, you were in the United States Marine Corps. Tell us about that and what your experience was like, the discipline that you learned, and what was the main reason for entering into the Marine Corps.
I wanted to serve. That was, I think, whether you're entering the Marine Corps or any other branch, that has to be the basic underlying reason, beyond all the other reasons that you might choose a particular branch. But wanting to serve the country is the main reason. Mm-hmm. I also, I joined the Marine Corps when I was in law school, so I, at that point, pretty much knew I was going to be a lawyer, and I wanted to do something else in addition to law. And I wanted to do something else that was meaningful, and I wanted to do something that was physical, at least in part. And so when I learned about the Judge Advocate program that the Marine Corps has, and other branches too, but I learned specifically about the Marine Corps program, that's what, it had all of those qualities and attracted me to it. And as the toughest branch, that also attracted me. I just didn't want to be a lawyer in the military. I wanted to be a service member who happens to do law.
Thank you for your service, and I really appreciate what you've done for our country. I just want to step back a little bit and ask you on your opinion, your personal opinion. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But what do you think about some NFL players that are taking the knee, and the sole purpose of them doing that? And are you offended by it in any way? Because you are a African American woman who served our country, and you are also laying down the law in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I just wanted to get your opinion on the whole reasoning. What do you feel, when it comes to the NFL's taking the knee? We have the president, Donald Trump, who's making it more than it really is. If you don't really learn your history and really learn from the NFL players from their standpoint as far as why they're taking the knee, it's easy to judge without learning the facts. So I just wanted to get your opinion on that, and what do you think?
No, it does not offend me. I'm not offended by any protesting. I think protest is how the country actually began. Okay. The Europeans who came here to begin this country were in protest of Britain. It was not all of the people who were in favor of all the policies and the laws of that country. They were people in protest coming here to form a new land. And if you do look at history, like you said, which I have begun to think is the most important subject of all.
It is.
You see numerous examples, even if you're just looking at this country, in which protest is what has changed hearts and minds, as we say, within the law. And the freedom to do that and to express ideas and to forge ideas and try to persuade people is really American. It's really an American an American concept, an American tradition. So it does not offend me. It does not. The substance also does not offend me, because I am a service member, and I believe that you, as an American citizen, always have a right to speak your mind, and that's part of what I have fought for. Is your ability to stand and put your hand over your heart, or to take a knee if you have a different statement to make at that juncture. So it certainly does not offend me, and I actually think it's a part of an ongoing American tradition to bring light to things in different forms, including at an NFL game.
Yeah. And again, thank you for your service, and I appreciate that. It is a sensitive topic now. These days, people don't really take the time to learn. They're more of just prejudging and talking before they actually educate themselves. And we have a lot of different things that people are protesting about. And if they had not protested about it, we wouldn't know anything about it. So I think that's very important. And also, you were also recognized, and you received a 101 quilt of velour. What was that about, and how did you feel when that was presented to you?
It was a very proud moment. It was a surprise, and as I've learned about the organization, the Freedom Quilters now, I understand that they do it as a surprise to the service member, and I happened to be at work at the courthouse that day, and they had collaborated with my wife and daughter and the other judges there to present this right around the lunch hour. And I had not heard of the organization or known that they were doing this for service members. So not only was it a surprise, it was also a learning moment. And I was very honored. There's not many opportunities after one leaves active duty to be recognized for your service. And so one of the quilters who presented me was also the person who nominated me.
Oh, wow.
And she did so, interestingly, because she had been a juror.
Okay.
And I had greeted her along with the rest of the jury pool, and I usually mention my service in that time when I talk to jurors, and she noted it and sort of looked me up and got more information. So it was a nice coincidence that's even how we came to know each other, is from her coming to do her own jury service.
Wow, that's excellent. And congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the process. I know you have to be an attorney first before you become a judge. What made you decide to go? I know you said you wanted to be, you wanted to serve, and you wanted to be more, you wanted to become an attorney, but what was it? Did something impacted you that wanted you to be an attorney so that you can help people who cannot help themselves? Did you experience something that you felt that was wrong and that made you want to become an attorney?
I didn't experience anything personally that I thought was wrong and drove me to that field. I really had a passion for criminal law, sort of separate from my own life, and the concept of defending folks and perhaps being the only person in a room speaking and advocating for a particular person, and the possibility of being in a position to speak for someone and talk about things other than what they've done on their worst day.
Right.
That was really what my interest always was with criminal law.
What kind of cases did you take? Did you have one that you focused on, or did you just take all kinds of cases?
I've done, when I practiced, many types of cases, criminal and civil. On the criminal side, I've represented people accused of just about every crime, including, robbery, rape, murder, just about everything you can imagine. So, like most folks who do criminal law, and on the defense side, you're not necessarily choosing clients so much as they're coming to you from different avenues, but you sort of take folks as they come.
Right. Okay. And how long were you practicing before you became a judge?
Before I came on the bench, I was practicing about 18 years, I believe.
It's a long time.
Maybe a little less than that, but
Okay.
somewhere around there. I had been back in Boston and practicing for quite a while by then.
Now, what's the process like? Is there a secret to the process? Like, do they just pick people? I know I've been in courts all over the places, and there's not enough, black judges, I can say, representing the community the way that the community is set up. What's the process like? Do they research you, or do they come up to you? If you don't mind us asking,
No.
I don't know if there's a
No.
secret or there's a method to it, but I'm always curious to know, how is that process?
There's certainly no secret. It's not meant to be a secret. It's meant to be something all can apply for, and I'm glad to shed a little light on it. If that is in anyone's mind that you're sought out or recruited for the bench, that's just not the case. At least not in Massachusetts. The process is one of application, just like any other job that you'd apply to. Now, it's a pretty long application. It's very involved, and it asks a lot about your practice and the cases you've handled and the people that have been involved, and many other things. So it's a sort of a tedious endeavor to fill it out and get it prepared. But it is an application. It's a written application. It's online. Anyone can get the application and apply. There are requirements for, I believe, at least 10 years of practice in the law before you apply to be on the bench. And beyond that, there are not many strict requirements in terms of who can apply. So I am often encouraging, particularly lawyers of color in Massachusetts, to apply because, like you said, there are not enough of us, and it does not compare to the people that we serve. There's a complete mix match most of the time, and on the Superior Court where I sit, there are only now 2 black judges sitting, and out of about 83 or 84 of us. And that is disturbing to me because what it really means is that as a black defendant who is accused of the most serious crimes, which are the ones that come to Superior Court, you're almost guaranteed to be before a non-black judge.
That's true.
And almost guaranteed to be before a white judge. And that does not determine all within a case, but I think just in terms of overall jurisprudence and the confidence that the public has in the judiciary, it makes a difference.
Yeah, it does.
It makes a difference. And so the process begins with your application. You then get vetted from that application to go to an interview with the Judicial Nominating Commission. And there are about 21 of them, and you do an interview before pretty much all of them at once. If you make it past that stage with them voting thumbs up for you, then you go through a period in which they are vetting you sort of behind your back through the joint bar.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Out of the 21, how many are black that are judging?
At any point, I would say there's 1 or 2. I don't know right at this moment,
Right.
but there is never
Or not only
a
black.
huge percentage.
I mean, I should be fair. I know that there's not that many blacks, but is there any other ethnic backgrounds like Asian American?
There are.
Okay.
I have to say that the Judicial Nominating Commission is pretty diverse.
Okay.
And it's diverse not just in race and ethnicity. There is that, and I'm not sure the exact numbers, but it's certainly not exclusive.
Okay.
But it's also diverse in other ways so that you have folks coming from government work,
Okay.
folks coming from defense, folks coming from prosecution, folks coming from big firms, folks who are solo practitioners,
Right.
people who are of counsel at companies. So all types of lawyers and diverse in terms of what part of the state they're coming from. to make these decisions. So I think that they do a good job of making that initial body one with people who are coming from all over. And the joint bar will then vet you, like I said, without your participation amongst people who know you. And if you get beyond them, then you get to the governor's office, in which he and his lawyer consider you. You may then have a meeting with his lawyer, an interview with the governor's counsel, his lawyer, I should say. And if that person thinks you are suitable and good to go, then the governor may or may not nominate you.
Wow, that's a long process.
Oh, it's not done yet.
Oh, wow.
After the governor nominates you, much like the federal process, you then can't be confirmed, though, by the governor himself or herself. You've still got to go through yet another body, the governor's council, who are themselves an elected body of folks coming from all parts of Massachusetts. And they, after having a hearing in which you present yourself and others talk about you and they ask you questions, only after that do they either confirm you or not confirm you. So you have to do all of that to become a judge in Massachusetts. It's a pretty involved process.
It is involved, and it sounds like a year or long.
It can
longer.
be. It can be months. It can be a year. It can be longer. So it really depends.
And it kind of sounds, I mean, it's a good thing to be a judge, but it kind of sounds discouraging to have to go through all of that. And then once you go through all of that, there's a possibility you can either get it or you don't. So
That's true.
It's discouraging. But I think, some of the judges that I know that are black, they're not enough. And I think it's important because oftentimes when we, in the community, and we're prosecuting people of color or different, like Hispanic, Latinx or Hispanic people, when you see a white judge, you kind of almost think, damn, they're going to find me guilty. You know what I mean? And it's not a feeling that you would want to feel. And I'm not saying that is the case right now. I've met a lot of different judges that are nice, that are impartial. They want the defendant to be want the defendant to be someone who can change and learn from their mistakes. However, there are some that just don't know anything about the community and just lay down the law in the books. I've heard, it's not my story to tell, but I've heard one day a judge saw a young African American prosecutor, and he said, I never saw a defendant look so good, but he's actually the prosecutor. So that says a lot. But that's not my story to tell, but it was appalling to me for me to hear that, and I just feel that how many other old judges that's on the bench who their mind frame is one way and not the other. But I'm glad that you're on the bench and that you can make an impact in our community and that you can educate us at the same time. And you were just part of the project of litigating race. How was that, and what would you like to see happen when you're part of these projects?
Yes, that was the New England Innocence Project, and they sponsored a conference, an all-day conference on litigation in general. And that particular panel was called Litigating Race, and it was about the different parts in the criminal system at which race may come up, may be the subject of motions or other types of litigation, and should be a part of the conversation in a trial or even pre-trial. And so it was, I thought, very well put together. You had prosecutors and defense counsel speaking as well. And part of that is educating the bar on new and creative ways to handle cases and ways to deal with things that we are now becoming more and more aware of, like implicit bias, and whether it's jury selection or motions to suppress regarding police-citizen interactions, or even sentencing. There are ways to educate the court and persuade the court that do have to do with race and statistics and how traditionally minorities are treated in the country. So I thought it was very well put together, and I thought that it provided a wealth of information and resources for lawyers to be brave and courageous and deal with things that aren't just the criminal elements.
And what does that mean for the community as far as knowing that the court system is trying to put these projects in place so that they can educate their employees about these things that are going on? Because oftentimes people have their bias. When you go into the court, you don't know the process of the court. When you see people in the court, it's automatic. Sometimes people just get agitated. They don't know what to experience. They don't know what's going to happen because you're in a position of authority over them and basically over their life, because you're going to make a decision that will impact them, but not only them, their generation behind them. So how is that important for the community to know that?
I think it's very important for the community to know the steps that the courts are taking to be aware of our own biases, to be aware of some things that are newly discovered or have changed in terms of science, and whether it's about how we identify people as eyewitnesses, or whether it's about ballistics evidence, or whether it's about any other thing that has to do with what we might call social sciences or science. And becoming educated as judges on that, I think, makes us more well-rounded and more able to understand what's happening in cases, what's happening with individual defendants, and what's happening with the community. So my hope is that with the community knowing that we are working on those things, that it actually gives them more confidence in our ability to decide matters.
Okay. Also, I want us to get into the criminal. I want us to get into the nitty-gritty rather, into how you lay down the law. I know there's chapters and books and laws you have to follow, but also judges have discretion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we hear a lot from people in the community, which they should be talking about the system this, the system that. When you hear that, what do you want? Like, do you ever have an answer for people when they say, "Well, the system, y'all setting me up"? Like, what comes in mind to your mind when you hear that? What is the system?
Well, that's a big question. There's a lot to it. The system, there's not just some objective, inanimate system at play. The system is made up of a bunch of human beings doing a bunch of different jobs. You're in one of them, I'm in one of them. So collectively, it operates a certain way. And it operates a certain way in Boston that might be a little different than how it operates in Cincinnati. That might be a little different how it operates in Memphis. But it's all basically geared towards doing the same thing. One of the goals of the criminal justice system is to protect the public and to protect individual people from people who are committing crimes. And with that as the foundation, that's where we should be working from there up. The disconnect becomes what folks' everyday experience is. If you live, say, here in Quincy or in Dorchester or wherever, you may have more interactions than, say, someone in a rural community with law enforcement.
Right.
And because of those more interactions, you may have more opportunities to be in court, if you want to call them opportunities. The history of the country with regard to minorities and women, for that matter, even within the court system, is not a great history of how we've been treated, and not a great start. And you can point to a lot of examples of, say, if you're talking about black people, us being treated unfairly within the court system. And so I understand when people complain about the quote-unquote system. However, there is something to be said for we are here together.
Exactly.
And we are not excluded from working within the system, and you are not guaranteed to be subject to the system either. So there are things that we can do that make criminal justice what we want it to be.
Right.
There are things that we can do better, and it's not just about whether you work for the trial court, but also as a member of the community,
Yes.
things that we can do better. As a police officer, things that we can do better. As a probation officer, things that we can all do better. And I think it all comes back down to bias. People who talk about the system generally like that, I think are generally talking about bias
Right.
and being treated differently, say, than white citizens. And that's going to be a complaint across the board, everywhere I've ever been. Those disparities are part of the history because they're all happening in this country still. And those issues got to be worked out. Worked out. It's all a work in progress in every setting. The trial court is no different.
Right.
So, you know, I hear people and I understand it, and I appreciate the voicing of the complaint, and I appreciate the opportunity to be someone who is not in a mold of treating people unfairly, and to try to get it right. And I think that's the best that we can do.
What kind of approaches do you take? I know that we have bail. You know, a lot of people talking about bail reform. We have a lot of candidates that are running for the district attorney's office, and we have a good variety that's running. A lot of different, you know, coming from different cultures, different ethnic backgrounds, and I think that's wonderful for our community to see that, and it's important for them to vote. And it's important for people to understand that if you don't vote, whoever gets in office, that's who's going to be prosecuting the cases that come before them. So it's very important to get to know the law. Everyone has rights, but everybody needs to put their best foot forward as a community to learn and to educate what's going on in the judicial system in order for us to make a change. But what do you think about the bail reform? And when you have cases that come before you, what are the things that come to your mind? I know you have laws that you have to follow, but like we talked before, you have discretion. What are the things that you look and analyze before making a decision for bail?
I'm looking at everything that I can get my hands on at that time. That's a part of the case in which it may be the first time the judge is meeting the defendant and vice versa, and it's likely the first time that the judge is learning the facts that are even alleged by the Commonwealth, and you can get as much as you can glean at that point from the defendant, him or herself as well, through counsel or through probation, through your intake process, in terms of where the person is from, if they have family in the area, if they work, if they have children here or a spouse, whether or not they seem to be really a member of this community or they really live more so somewhere else is a factor. Whether they have the means to flee, or the means and the inclination, let's say, to flee. Also, one of the things with regard to the bail reform is the person's ability to pay. And that's been really the big debate, I would say, amongst people who are interested in criminal justice, is whether or not, how big a factor that is. Clearly, we are normally dealing with a community of people who are not rich. That's not my average defendant. It's not a rich person. And it's likely to be a poor person. And given that, when you set a bail in the millions of dollars, you're essentially holding that person without bail, without a chance to post bail. And the one thing that I think judges have to keep in mind at that stage is everything is fresh and new and heated, and emotional at the beginning of cases. Someone has just been killed. Someone has just been injured. Something has just been stolen. Something has just been damaged. Something has happened recently at the point that I'm setting bail. And people are upset. It may be the defendant, maybe a family that's affected, maybe a victim, the Commonwealth, the community. However, that's not a time for punishment.
Right.
So bail is not supposed to punish a defendant based upon the seriousness of what's alleged. It is literally meant to ensure that that person comes
returning
back to
court. Yeah.
And so it may be higher in some cases because the person has more money available or their family does. It may also be higher because of the seriousness of the offense, but that's not the end all be all. And again, if you're only looking at that, then you're really the motivation is punishment more than ensuring the person return to court. So I think that the reminder in the reform and in the Brannigan case that we are to consider a person's ability to pay is a really good reminder for judges, because we can get into a mode of valuing cases by the charges and not setting in a reasonable bail based on the fuller circumstances, and that's what we should really be doing.
And what do you think about when the district attorney, they're the ones that allegedly telling you what's happening, they're reciting the facts to you. In some cases, we know besides bail, there's conditions of release. But what happens when you hear a prosecutor, fresh from college, is in front of you and asking you for it's assault and battery on a brother and sister, when they ask you for bail, say $5,000 for bail, and because I've heard it before, and they want GPS exclusion zone, and it's only a sister and brother fight. I mean, I know, we get, siblings fight all the time. Had I reported my sister when I was growing up, we fighting, she'd probably be locked up several times. But I think in certain cases where we know the case is not going anywhere towards the end of the case, what do you say about that?
Well, I think
I know it depends on the severity of the case and how it comes out, but oftentimes we have cases that come before us, and towards the end of the trial date, the witness or the victim doesn't want to come forward. Oh, we reconciled, that's my brother, sister. I mean, during the first part of the arraignment, you always hear an outrageous bail and a GPS, where we should be using GPS for more serious cases. When you get cases like that, I mean, what are you thinking?
Well, it is always up to the judge at the end of the day whether or not to impose those types of conditions. The policies and the practices of the different district attorneys sort of varies from county to county, and perhaps even from courthouse to courthouse. But I think each case should be looked at on its own, and it's difficult to generalize about DAs asking for particular conditions. I think we see things sort of ebb and flow in the trial court like other things, and more and things that may be trending, so to speak, and there may be a lean towards imposing more GPS monitors on folks, but that's not really we really shouldn't have a trend, because you should be dealing with the situation on a case-by-case basis. And so situations in which no one has a crystal ball.
Right.
And so there may be situations in which the matter will end up with a victim recanting or the Commonwealth not going forward for reasons that have to do with the parties. But at the outset, I think you've got to look at the allegations as they stand and the person before you to determine if that's needed.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, really, no matter if it's bail or conditions or sentence, the point is to do what's necessary and no more.
Right.
What's necessary and no more. And I think if we all keep that in mind between the judges and the district attorneys, we may come a little closer to the middle.
That's good to know. Also, this is also for people who've been victimized and witnesses. How important is it for victims to know if you ask the prosecutor and the judge for a stay away, no contact, or stay away from your location, whatever you're asking the judge and the prosecutor, and they put in place what you ask for so that they can ensure that you're safe and your community is safe. How important is it for them to know, you can come back and file a motion to take those requests out, but once you ask for something, we take these things seriously. You can't just come back, oh, we're friends now, and I want these conditions to be removed. How important is it for victims to know that when you ask for something, we listen, but you just can't come back and get mad? Because I've seen it before where people come back in court, oh, I want these conditions to be removed now, we reconciled, and they get mad for not, taking these conditions off. How important is it for us to let the community know that we hear you, we care for you, and we want you to be safe, but you just can't come back and get mad when you want these conditions to be taken off? Because there is a process, there is an arraignment, there is a pre-trial, and there could be a compliance and election, and then a jury trial when the case is over. How important is it for people to know that there is a process?
It's very important, and it's really not it's not a game, and it's not a tool to be used in any relationship, whether
Right.
it's siblings or parents or spouses or otherwise. It's a criminal process, and it's not only important because of the types of decisions that we make in people's lives, whether it's to stay away from someone or to not have contact with a person or not to go to a location. Those are serious restrictions on a person's freedom that I take very seriously. And also, those are things that go on a person's record forever.
Yeah.
So to have it be something that you playfully do or that you do to sort of get back at someone, I take great offense to that type of conduct.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it will be determined on a case-by-case basis. So just because you come in and ask it to be removed, if the judge has determined that the person may be a danger to you or someone else, it may not be removed anyway.
Right, exactly.
So again, the judge is making the final determination, even if there's a request and even if it's a family member.
I know we can, I know an hour is just not enough for us to talk about the criminal justice system. I would love to talk more about the etiquette when you come into court. What is it that you want people to know when you have to respect the court, you have to respect the judge. Your clothing says a lot when you come before the judge, being respectful, not talking when the judge is talking. How important, I don't believe it would affect their case, because it's not supposed to, but presentation is the key when people come to court. When you're in court, how is that important to you?
It's very important. The entire setting in the courtroom is important. From how everyone is dressed, and I do mean everyone,
Mm-hmm.
the judge, the attorneys, the court officers, the defendants, the people in the audience. I think when you come to court, it really is a business setting, more so, and the way that you're dressed should relay that you're there to conduct business, no matter which side of a matter you're on, and putting your best foot forward. And I distinguish it from church clothing, although you may wear the same clothes that you wear to church, and I distinguish it from clothing that you pretty much wear anywhere else,
Right.
even to work, and certainly to party. It's just a different mode that you have to be in. You should be dressing for the respect that you want in that setting, and that's no matter who you are. Particularly, though, if you are a defendant, you know, the trends of clothing and dress may be one thing on the street, but how you come into the courtroom, you know, you should have a collared shirt on. If you can, you should have a tie.
Right.
When I represented people, you know, I didn't buy $100 ties. I would go to the thrift store, to the Goodwill, and get them a tie for $1, and make sure that they knew how to put it on, or put it on for them. The anyone else coming to the courtroom should be taking it that seriously as well, including jurors. And that gives everyone in the courtroom the confidence in the forum, the feeling that this is serious.
Yeah.
And it also goes in with how the courts look, which is why when I was at Roxbury, I insisted that we paint the conference rooms that people were able to talk to their clients in, and provide paperwork and things to write within those rooms, so that the room didn't look like you're already in jail.
Yeah.
You know, that makes a big difference.
It does.
And I insisted that we fix our carpets in the courtroom so that you're not walking into a raggedy courtroom.
Right.
That makes a big difference about how people feel about what they're doing there, how they behave there, what's imposed on them
And
in
what
that
they
room.
take serious too.
That's right. So I think everyone participating in it should be dressing and acting accordingly. I take etiquette very seriously, especially when it comes to the courtroom.
Yeah, we can stay here for like another hour.
We could.
But we're going to have to wrap it up. But I just want everybody to know that you're not only a judge, but you are doing other things in the community. And if you would, if you wouldn't mind sharing what else you do with the community, so people know that, you know, besides being a judge, you care for what you do. You care. You're not just laying down the law, but you're actually mentoring young people. You're actually participating and educating other people, you know, to be something and to be an impact in their community. And if you can just share briefly, what are other things that you do in the community?
Well, I do hope to have that impact on people in the community, and the younger folks I can interact with, the better. I do a lot of engagements like this, in which I come and talk about careers, come and talk about the law, even come and talk about military service. The district attorney's office in Suffolk County does a great program with the Lee School and probably other schools, in which we go and speak to the students, read to them, answer questions. And I usually do that every year, and that's usually with about second and third graders.
Okay.
I also do a lot of trial advocacy work for law students. Just Wednesday of this week, I was at the Boston College Lahanas Retreat, which is their minority umbrella organization there, to talk about diversity in the law, and participate on a panel talking to people going into law school who haven't even started yet, or are just about to go and start at BC, about diversity and issues of survival, you know, as a minority in the law. The other programs that I participate in are like at Harvard, the Trial Advocacy Workshop, which was a creation of Charles Ogletree, Professor Ogletree, and Professor Ron Sullivan, who is now, I believe, running that program. And that's something that I've done every year, I think once or twice a year, however it happens, with spring and fall, and helping law students there do mock trials and actually work on every part of a criminal and a civil trial, and practice it. So lots of events, and I try to get all over. Also in Worcester, there's a court officer there who is very active in the community and putting on different programs. And I've also come out and tried to speak to high school students in that setting.
Okay. Thank you so much, Judge Frison. We appreciate you taking your time to come here and talk to us. You're definitely going to be back so we can talk some
Thank you.
more.
Yes, we have to continue.
I appreciate your humility and your work that you're doing in the judicial system. And we thank you for fighting for our country. We thank you for just giving us, some information to educate ourselves as a community. I always say, if we want to make a change in our community, let's go to school, learn something, and fight to be in these positions where we can make the change. I know it's not always easy as people of color, but you know, when we need something, we fight. We have to fight to get to the positions that we need in order to make that change. And I want to also thank my viewers that are watching this, that are going to be watching this, and also tuning in. If you have any questions for me, I'd like to read those questions in our next time we're here next Saturday, and we can try to answer some questions for people. You can reach me at voiceofreasonboston@gmail.com. Also, I would like to thank Michelle Nolly from Last Shot in Stoughton for talking to me yesterday, and I just wanted to give her a quick shout out. If you're in the Stoughton area, definitely check Last Shot Bar and Grill. They can provide you with all the foods and beverages that you like to eat. And again, thank you to all my listeners, and I appreciate your support. Thank you for tuning in.